Good evening, and welcome back. Come closer to the edge of the night and imagine that the room around you has become very quiet. The walls are still here, the floor is still beneath you, but somewhere beyond them a dark sea is breathing. It moves in long, slow folds under a moon half hidden by cloud. It is the wine-dark sea of old Greek song, not red like blood, not black like an ending, but deep and shining the colour of a cup held in shadow. You do not need to sail it, not yet. You only need to listen. In the distance, beyond the low sound of water, there is an ember on the horizon. It might be a star. It might be the last glow of a city that has burned itself into memory. The city is Troy, called Ilion by the Greeks, and for 10 long years men have stood beneath its walls and dreamed of going home. Some dreamed of islands, some dreamed of vineyards, some dreamed of children who had grown almost beyond knowing. Among them was Odysseus, king of rocky Ithaca, a small island of goats, olive trees, stone paths, and bright harbours. He was not the tallest of the Greeks, nor the strongest, nor the most beautiful. His gift was metis, that quick, turning intelligence the Greeks admired, a mind like a knot that could untie itself in darkness. Tonight, you may let that mind do the travelling for you. You may lie still while the ships move out from Troy. You may rest while oars dip and rise. Nothing will come suddenly here. The monsters will remain at a distance, softened by mist. The griefs will be carried like lamps behind curtains. The old gods will pass overhead like weather, immense and quiet. This is not a tale to keep you awake with alarm. It is a tale of longing, delay, and return, of how the heart can wander for years and still remember the shape of its own door. The Greeks had a word for homecoming, nostos. It means more than arrival. It means the ache of being drawn back toward the place where your name is known. It means the road after glory, the difficult voyage after the song of battle has ended. Odysseus had won renown at Troy, but renown is a cold blanket. It cannot warm a bed. It cannot speak in the voice of Penelope, his wife, patient and watchful in Ithaca. It cannot place a hand on the shoulder of Telemachus, his son, who was an infant when the black ships sailed away. So, let your breathing become the breathing of the sea. Let each inhale be a wave gathering itself in the dark. Let each exhale be water drawing back over stones. Ahead lies a voyage of 10 years, yet you do not have to count the years. You may drift from island to island, from moon to moon, from dream to dream. Odysseus will carry the burden of wanting to arrive. You may simply be carried. Troy did not fall with a single cry, but with many quiet endings. A gate opened where it should have stayed closed. A wooden horse, built by Greek hands and offered as a riddle, stood inside the walls. By dawn, the proud city of Priam had become smoke, scattered bronze and dust on the sandals of strangers. The Greeks, who had begged the gods for victory, stood among the proof of it and found that victory had the taste of ashes. Odysseus moved through that morning with the rest of them, not untouched by what he had done. In old poems he is many things at once, clever, brave, ruthless, weary, beloved of Athena, hated by Poseidon, capable of tenderness, capable of hard choices. In a sleep story, we do not linger over the harshness. We see instead the pause after the noise, the way a man can stand before the sea and feel suddenly older than the day before. His ships waited, their dark hulls rocked softly at anchor. The men of Ithaca wanted home, and Odysseus wanted it with a longing that had become almost physical, like thirst. The shore of the Troad lay under a pale sky. Armour was stacked, ropes were coiled, captains called to crews in voices made hoarse by years of command. Men touched the prows of their ships as if touching the heads of horses. The sea beyond them looked open and forgiving, yet the sea, in Greek thought, was never only water. It was a road and a wilderness, a shining surface over deep unknowns. Poseidon ruled there, earth-shaker, lord of horses and waves. To leave land was to place yourself in the hands of a god whose moods could change with the wind. Still, the oars went out. Still, the sails rose. Troy slipped backward, smaller and smaller, until its smoke was only a grey thread. Odysseus watched it vanish. He might have thought of fame. He might have thought of the wooden horse and the long nights of planning. Yet underneath every thought was Ithaca. He remembered the slope of his island, the small fields, the smell of olive wood, the bed he had made with his own hands from the rooted trunk of a living tree. He remembered Penelope, whose name would one day mean patience to the world, though to him she was not a symbol, but a person breathing under the same moon. The first days at sea held the strange lightness that comes after a burden is set down. Men laughed too loudly. They slept in shifts, their heads against coils of rope. They spoke of feasts waiting at home. They imagined that the hardest part of their lives was already behind them. But the Odyssey, the old song of Odysseus, begins in that era. It begins when a man thinks the way home is only a line on water. It begins when the sea opens, not like a road, but like a question. A soft wind carried the ships to a coast where the air itself seemed to have been steeped in sleep. This was the land of the Lotus-Eaters, a people without anger in the old story, living among flowers that made memory loosen its fingers. The lotus was not a weapon. It was sweeter and more dangerous than that. It offered rest without return, a peaceful forgetting in which Ithaca became less urgent. Penelope became a face seen through water, and the long wound of war closed under petals. Odysseus sent a few men inland to learn who lived there. They were welcomed gently. No spear was raised, no door was barred. The Lotus-Eaters gave them the fruit of the lotus, and the men tasted it. Soon their eyes grew calm. They no longer wished to bring news back to the ships. They no longer wished to row or mend sails or watch the stars. They wished only to remain where the shore was mild and every sorrow had been softened until it asked nothing. There is a kind of forgetting that feels like mercy. Odysseus understood this, perhaps more than anyone. He had seen too much. He had carried too much. Yet he also knew that to forget home is to lose the thread by which the soul returns to itself. So, he went after his men. He spoke their names. When names did not wake them, he led them back with firmness, not cruelty. He brought them to the benches and had the ships pushed from shore before the sweetness could spread. As the island faded, no one sang. The men who had tasted the lotus wept quietly, not because they had been harmed, but because they had been called back to longing. The oars resumed their rhythm. Dip, pull, lift. Dip, pull, lift. Memory returned like a weight placed carefully in the hands. In the ancient songs, the world is full of powers with names. Wind has a keeper. Dawn has rosy fingers. The sun has cattle. The sea has a lord. To hear the story this way is to let the world become alive without becoming loud, sacred without becoming sharp. They came next to a coast of cliffs and caves where sheep moved like pale stones across the slopes. Here lived the Cyclopes, the one-eyed giants of old Greek imagination, children of wild earth and open sky. Odysseus, curious even when caution would have been kinder, took some companions to explore. They found a cave rich with cheeses, milk pails, lambs, and the heavy smell of animals. The owner was Polyphemus, son of Poseidon. When Polyphemus returned, he rolled a great stone across the entrance, and the cave became a night within the night. In the old poem, the danger is severe. Here, let it stand at a softened distance. Think of the men listening to the giant breathe. Think of the firelight, trembling on stone. Think of Odysseus measuring every shadow, searching for a path where none seemed to exist. Strength could not move the door. Panic could not open it. Only patience and a crooked path of thought remained. Odysseus offered wine. He gave a false name, autis in Greek, meaning nobody. It was a small word with a hidden blade of wit. Polyphemus drank and slept. In the ancient tale, Odysseus and his men used a sharpened stake to blind the giant. We pass that moment gently, as a sudden darkness within darkness, a cry echoing outward to the neighboring caves. When the other Cyclopes asked who troubled him, Polyphemus answered, "Nobody." And because language itself had been turned into a door, no help came. At dawn, the giant let his sheep pass out beneath his hands, feeling their backs. Odysseus tied his men beneath the animals, hidden in wool and warmth. He himself clung beneath the great ram. Thus they passed from the cave into morning. The light outside must have seemed like a blessing poured over the stones, yet cleverness has its own danger. As the ship pulled away, Odysseus could not resist calling his true name. He wanted Polyphemus to know who had escaped him. Pride rose like a wave, and the wave broke badly. Polyphemus lifted his hands to Poseidon, his father, and prayed that Odysseus might reach home late, alone, and under sorrow. The sea heard. The sea keeps its slow rhythm here, wide enough to carry pride away from the shore of thought. Every sail becomes a small, pale shape, moving through darkness, and every breath lets the story grow quieter. Cleverness can wound when it asks for too much applause. The long sea answers such hunger with weather, and Odysseus will spend years learning to speak his own name more quietly. After many days they reached the floating island of Aeolus, keeper of the winds. Aeolus was not the great god of all weather, but a lord entrusted with winds that could be bound and released. His island drifted in brightness, ringed with bronze, full of feasting halls and ordered air. There Odysseus was welcomed. For a while the voyage seemed to become simple again. A host listened to his story. A table was set. The men rested. When it was time to leave, Aeolus gave Odysseus a gift that was also a test, a leather bag in which the storm winds had been tied. Only the west wind was left free to blow the ships toward Ithaca. For 9 days and nights Odysseus held the course. He would not sleep. He watched the stars. He watched the water. At last, the hills of Ithaca rose on the horizon close enough that smoke from home fires seemed almost visible. Then exhaustion took him. While he slept, his companions looked at the bag. They wondered what treasure their captain was hiding. Gold, perhaps. Silver. A private reward. Suspicion once awake can be stronger than loyalty. They opened the bag and the imprisoned winds rushed out with a sound like the sky tearing open. The ships were driven backward over the same waters they had crossed with such hope. When Odysseus returned to Aeolus begging for help, the Keeper of Winds refused him. To the ancient mind, such misfortune suggested divine displeasure. Odysseus turned away again, with Ithaca now not merely distant, but lost after being seen. Of all griefs, the grief of almost arriving is among the quietest and hardest. Sleep gathers around this part of the voyage like mist over water. Nothing in the tale needs to hurry now. The island fades, the oars settle, and memory returns only as softly as the tide. The bag of winds has spilled. The hills of Ithaca have fallen behind the wrong horizon, and yet the night does not punish. It offers the long blue distance back, the way an old song forgives an interruption and resumes its line. You may let the names pass gently. Odysseus, Penelope, Telemachus, Athena. They do not need to be held tightly. They are like constellations seen between clouds. One moment they are clear, the next they soften, and still the voyage continues under them. The sea next drew them into a harbour whose cliffs rose steeply on either side. It was the land of the Laestrygonians, remembered in myth as a people of terrifying size and hostility. We will not dwell on harsh images. Let the scene remain wide and dim. A narrow entrance, still water inside, high walls of stone, a silence too complete to be peaceful. Odysseus, cautious now, moored his own ship outside the harbour while the others entered. Messengers went inland and found a house too large for comfort, a queen like a mountain in a doorway, and a king whose welcome was no welcome. Soon the harbour that had seemed safe became a trap. Stones fell from the heights. Ships broke against one another. The cries of men thinned into distance. Odysseus cut the cable of his single ship, and that one vessel fled back to open water. There are losses a story cannot mend. The fleet that had left Troy proud, and many had become one dark ship under a frightened sail. Odysseus looked back at the cliffs until they vanished. Each vanished mast was a household changed forever. Each empty bench was a name that would not be spoken at home by the man who owned it. The sea did not explain. It only carried the survivors onward. The cliffs fall back into distance, tall and silent under the moon. Their danger belongs to the old song, not to this room, and the listener may let the ship pass beyond them without fear. Only one ship remains of the 12 that left Troy, yet even that loss is set down gently here, the way a singer sets down a heavy line at the end of a stanza and lets the next breath begin in a lower key. At last, the remaining ship came to Aiaia, the island of Circe. Her name is often spoken as enchantress, but in the old song she is more than a simple danger. She is a goddess or nymph of great power, daughter of Helios, the sun, and she lives in a house set among trees where tame wolves and lions move like memories of wildness made gentle. Smoke rose from her roof, a voice could be heard singing at a loom. Odysseus sent men to explore, led by Eurylochus, whose caution would later become important. They found Circe at her weaving. She welcomed them, gave them food and drink, and with her wand transformed them into swine. Let this transformation be dreamlike rather than cruel. Imagine their human grief hidden behind animal eyes. Imagine not pain but a terrible confusion, a forgetting of speech, a lowering of the self into instinct. Eurylochus escaped and warned Odysseus. On the path to Circe's house, Odysseus met Hermes, the messenger god, bright and quiet as a thought. Hermes gave him moly, a mysterious herb with a black root and white flower, protection against enchantment. With it, Odysseus entered the house. Circe's magic did not master him. She recognized in him a fate larger than an ordinary wanderer. The men were restored, baths were drawn, tables were set. For the first time in a long while there was warmth without immediate danger. Circe became host, teacher, and lover. The crew stayed on Aiaia for a year. This, too, is part of the voyage. Not every delay looks like punishment. Some delays are comfortable. Some are fragrant with bread, oil, and clean linen. Some speak in a beautiful voice and say, "Rest here a little longer." But the heart that truly seeks home cannot sleep forever in another person's house. At last, the men reminded Odysseus of Ithaca. Circe did not rage. She told him what must come next. Before he could sail home, he must travel to the edge of the world and speak with the dead, especially Tiresias, the blind prophet of Thebes. The road home would pass through shadow. Circe remains on her island of trees and lamplight, no longer a threat and no longer a delay, only one more name the voyage has carried through the shadow and released into calm. Her loom continues somewhere out of hearing, weaving small patient figures that no one needs to interpret tonight. The men return to themselves slowly, as travelers always do, and the year on Aiaia folds into the larger silence of the tale. The ship went north and west to the limits of the known sea, where Oceanus, the great river encircling the world in Greek imagination, moved under a dim sky. There the land was hushed. No bright sunrise warmed it. The air seemed made of ash and old breath. Odysseus came to consult the dead, not because he loved darkness, but because some knowledge can only be received where ordinary daylight ends. He performed the rites as Circe had instructed. The shades gathered, thin as smoke, each carrying the outline of a former life. Among them came Tiresias, blind in life yet seeing beyond life. He warned Odysseus that Poseidon was angry because of Polyphemus. He spoke of the island of Thrinacia, where the sacred cattle of Helios grazed. "Touch them not," he said, in the old story's solemn way, or ruin would follow. If Odysseus restrained his men, he might yet come home, though late and in hardship. Then came Anticlea, Odysseus's mother. He had left her alive when he sailed for Troy. Now he found her among the dead. This meeting is one of the most tender sorrows in the Odyssey. He reached for her, but a shade cannot be held. 3 times he tried, and 3 times she slipped from his arms like a dream dissolving at dawn. She told him of Ithaca, of Penelope waiting, of Telemachus growing, of Laertes, his father, withdrawing into grief. Home was still there, but time had been moving inside it. Other figures appeared: Agamemnon with his bitter story, Achilles with his great fame and greater weariness, Ajax silent in old anger. Odysseus listened. The underworld taught him that glory is thinner than breath. Achilles, the brightest warrior of the Greeks, would rather be a poor servant among the living than king over all the dead. It was a lesson as quiet as a stone dropped into deep water. When Odysseus returned to the ship, the men saw something changed in him. He had gone seeking directions and returned with the weight of mortality. The home he sought was not eternal. Penelope would age, Telemachus would change. His own hands would not remain strong forever. This made Ithaca more precious, not less. After the land of the dead, even sunlight can feel strange. The men returned first to Circe, who gave them food, counsel, and warnings for the road ahead. She spoke of the Sirens, whose song drew sailors toward ruin. The Sirens did not merely sing beautifully, they sang knowledge. They promised to tell each listener the secret shape of his own life, the meaning of Troy, the meaning of pain, the meaning of desire. To a tired heart, such a song is almost impossible to refuse. Odysseus softened wax and pressed it into his companions' ears. He ordered them to bind him upright to the mast and not to release him, no matter how he pleaded. The ship moved over calm water. The island of the Sirens lay pale in the distance. Then the song began. He heard his name, he heard praise. He heard the suggestion that if he came closer, every restless question in him would finally be answered. Bound to the mast, he strained against the ropes. The men, deaf to the song, rowed steadily on. Their oars entered and left the water like a slow heartbeat. The Sirens fell behind. Their music thinned, then vanished. Sometimes wisdom is not the absence of desire. Sometimes wisdom is arranging, while calm, to be protected from what you will want when you are not calm. Beyond the Sirens lay a passage between two dangers. On one side was Scylla, imagined as a many-headed being in a cliffside cave. On the other was Charybdis, a whirlpool that swallowed and released the sea. Circe had told Odysseus that he could not avoid both. He must pass nearer Scylla and accept a smaller grief rather than lose all. In this telling, we keep the sorrow veiled. The ship entered the strait. The water boiled near Charybdis. The cliff of Scylla leaned overhead. Men looked where Odysseus told them not to look. There was confusion, a shadow, a cry carried upward, and then absence. The ship emerged, lighter by several lives. Odysseus did not speak of it at once. A captain sometimes survives by choosing, and then must live with the choice. The sea after the strait was wide and glittering. That made the grief stranger. How can the world be beautiful after loss? Yet it is. The wave still lifts, the gull still turns, the sun still lays a path of gold over water no one has forgiven. The island of Thrinacia rose green under the sun. There grazed the cattle of Helios, the sun god, shining and sacred, tended by nymphs. Tiresias had warned Odysseus, Circe had warned him again, do not harm the cattle, sail past if you can. But the men were exhausted, and Eurylochus spoke for the hunger of bodies that had obeyed too long. They begged to land only for a night, only to rest. Odysseus made them swear an oath not to touch the herds. For a while, the oath held. Then the winds turned against them. Day after day, storm and contrary air trapped the ship on the island. Their stores dwindled. Hunger sharpened thought into resentment. Odysseus withdrew inland to pray, and sleep overcame him. While he slept, the men made their choice. They took what was forbidden and offered prayers that could not undo the taking. Helios saw. The sun sees because it must. He complained to Zeus, and the balance of the world answered. When the ship finally left Thrinacia, a storm rose. Zeus sent a bolt into the mast, and the vessel broke under a sky suddenly immense. Again, we keep the image soft. Dark water, scattered timber, voices fading into rain, Odysseus clinging to what remained. All his companions were gone. The curse of Polyphemus had narrowed around him. Late, alone, under sorrow, the words had become water around his mouth. For days he drifted, lashed to broken wood, carried past Charybdis again, lifted and lowered by waves that did not hate him and did not pity him. At last the sea brought him to Ogygia, the hidden island of Calypso. The storm has spent itself far behind the raft. Broken water becomes smooth water, and the body that survived it can rest at last under leaves, under stars, under the quiet care of the goddess who watches. The cattle of Helios are eaten, the last ship is lost, the companions are gone, and still the sea sets one tired man on a strange shore, as if even ruin could be carried gently when there is no one left to instruct. Calypso's island was beautiful in the way a secret can be beautiful. Ogygia lay far from the known routes of ships. Vines grew around a cave, birds nested in dark leaves, 4 springs ran with clear water, meadows opened with violets and parsley. Calypso herself was a nymph whose name is often linked with concealment, with covering over. She found Odysseus broken by the sea and cared for him. For 7 years he remained there. In some lights it might have seemed a paradise. There was food, shelter, beauty, and a deathless woman who loved him. Calypso offered immortality, a body untouched by age, a life outside the ordinary grief of mortals. But Odysseus sat on the shore and looked toward the horizon. He wept, not every moment, not theatrically, but with the steady sorrow of someone whose deepest wish lies beyond sight. When Hermes came from Zeus carrying the command that Odysseus must be released, Calypso grieved and protested. The gods often had their own double standards. Yet she obeyed. She gave him tools, cloth for a sail, food and drink, and showed him how to build a raft. Their parting was not simple hatred. It was the sadness of unequal desires. Calypso wanted to keep. Odysseus wanted to return. To choose Penelope was to choose age, uncertainty, and a mortal bed over endless youth in a shining cave. That is one of the deep mysteries of the poem. Home is not chosen because it is perfect. It is chosen because it is yours, because your life has grown roots there, because someone has waited in time rather than outside it. Immortality drifts away like a bright island disappearing behind the horizon. Odysseus chooses the mortal shore, the aging beloved, the rooted bed, and the ordinary night that makes home precious. There is a kind of love that prefers what can be lost, because what can be lost is also what can be known, and the gods, for all their splendor, often live too far from morning bread to understand the weight of a single returning step. Odysseus sailed again, not in a proud ship now, but on a raft made by his own hands. For 17 days he crossed the water. Then Poseidon saw him and stirred the sea. The raft broke. A sea goddess, Ino, gave him a veil that helped him survive. He swam until his strength was nearly gone, and the river of Scheria received him at last. He crawled beneath olive bushes and slept under leaves covered by Athena's care. Morning brought voices. Nausicaa, princess of the Phaeacians, had come with her companions to wash clothes by the river. Athena had sent her a dream, gently turning her steps toward the stranger. When Odysseus emerged, salt-stained and worn, he spoke carefully, with humility and grace. He did not frighten her. He asked for mercy. Nausicaa, young and clear-hearted, gave him clothing, food, and directions to the city. The Phaeacians lived on Scheria, a place between the ordinary world and the marvelous. Their king was Alcinous, and their queen was Arete, whose wisdom Odysseus was told to seek first. In their halls, he was welcomed as a suppliant. A bard sang of Troy, and Odysseus covered his face and wept. The king noticed. At last, Odysseus revealed his name and told the long story of his wanderings. Storytelling became a kind of healing. What had been chaos became sequence. What had been pain became speech. The Phaeacians listened through the night, and when the tale was done, they gave gifts, and prepared a ship. Their sailors did not need guidance like ordinary men. They carried sleeping Odysseus over the sea and laid him on the shore of Ithaca, surrounded by treasure, while dawn waited behind the hills. Scheria remains as a gentle harbour in the story, a place where strangers listened and a tired man was carried while he slept. Its kindness needs no refrain. It only glows once and recedes. The Phaeacian ship moves through the night, with him aboard, and the rowers leave him on his own beach before dawn so quietly that the gulls do not start, as if hospitality at the right hour could be indistinguishable from sleep itself. Odysseus woke and did not know his own land. Athena had wrapped Ithaca in mist, partly to protect him, partly because return is never as simple as recognition. He thought he had been left on a foreign shore. Then the goddess came to him, first disguised, then revealed. Athena, grey-eyed goddess of wisdom, craft, and strategy, loved Odysseus because his mind answered hers. Together they planned. His house was troubled. During his absence, suitors had gathered around Penelope, eating his stores, filling the halls with noise, pressing her to choose a new husband. Telemachus had grown from infant to young man under that pressure. Penelope had resisted with intelligence of her own. She wove a shroud by day and unwove it by night, delaying choice through craft. In this, she and Odysseus were matched. Both survived by patience shaped into action. Athena disguised Odysseus as an old beggar. He went first to the hut of Eumaeus, the loyal swineherd, whose simple kindness shines warmly in the poem. Eumaeus did not know his master, yet he welcomed the stranger, gave him food, and spoke of Odysseus with grief and loyalty. There is a tenderness in being loved when absent. There is a deeper tenderness in hearing that love before revealing yourself. Telemachus returned from his own search for news of his father. In the hut, with Athena's help, Odysseus showed himself to his son. Telemachus could hardly believe it. The man he had imagined all his life stood before him, weathered, scarred by sea and sorrow, alive. Their embrace held 20 years of absence. It did not erase them, it gathered them. Together they went to the house. The old dog Argos, lying neglected near the gate, recognized Odysseus before many humans did. He lifted his head, saw his master, and then let go of life. It is a small moment, almost unbearable in its quietness. The house itself seemed to know, even while the people inside remained blind. The reckoning with the suitors belongs to the ancient poem, and it is stern. Here, we pass over it softly. Think instead of a bow strung by the one hand that still knows it, of a hall holding its breath, of disorder brought to an end like a storm moving out to sea. The important thing for this night is not punishment, but restoration. The house, long invaded by noise, began to remember silence. Ithaca is no longer a word of longing only. It is earth underfoot, smoke beyond the trees, a house waiting to become true again, and the quiet permission to stop travelling for tonight. The suitors fall silent. The hall is washed. The dogs lie down. The bed knows its master, and the master knows the bed. And between them is a stillness that has waited 20 years to be allowed. Penelope did not rush into belief. This matters. She had survived too long by caution to surrender it at the first impossible joy. A man stood before her, claiming to be Odysseus. He looked like him and did not look like him. Time had written on his face. Sea wind had changed his body. Hope itself can be dangerous when it arrives wearing the shape of what you most desire. So she tested him with the secret of their bed. She ordered that it be moved. Odysseus flared with recognition, because the bed could not be moved. He had built it around the trunk of a living olive tree, rooted in the earth beneath their chamber. He had shaped the room around it. The bed was not furniture. It was a covenant between craft and place, between marriage and soil. Only the true Odysseus would know. When he spoke of it, Penelope knew. The distance between them, 20 years wide, narrowed. They held one another and wept as shipwrecked swimmers reach land. In the old simile, her joy is like that of sailors seeing shore after Poseidon has shattered their vessel. It is one of the most beautiful reversals in Greek poetry. Odysseus, who has longed for land, becomes himself the land Penelope reaches. Home, then, is not merely a roof. It is a shared memory no stranger can counterfeit. It is a bed rooted in olive wood. It is a name spoken by the right voice. It is the place where your disguises can finally fall away. Even then, peace is not instant. The world beyond the house must still be calmed. Families must be answered. The gods must settle what mortals cannot. Yet for one night, the wanderer is no longer wandering. Imagine the palace of Ithaca growing quiet. Imagine Telemachus sleeping with a lighter heart. Imagine Penelope awake beside the husband she mourned before he died. Imagine Odysseus listening, not to waves for once, but to the breathing of his own house. The sea is still there below the cliffs. It always will be. But tonight, it does not call him away. Before the voyage folds completely into sleep, it can open once more around the parts of the story that make homecoming feel human. Odysseus is often remembered for cleverness, but cleverness alone would make a colder tale. What keeps the Odyssey alive is that intelligence is always tied to longing. His mind turns because his heart is fixed on a place. Every disguise, every careful word, every plan made under pressure bends toward Ithaca, toward Penelope, toward the bed rooted in living wood. The old singers understood that a person can win a war and still be unfinished. Troy gives Odysseus fame, but fame does not tell him how to sit quietly at his own hearth again. It does not restore the years Telemachus spent fatherless. It does not return the men who sailed beside him. The voyage home is therefore not an afterword to battle. It is the deeper test, whether a man shaped by danger can become recognizable again to the people who waited. Think of the ships leaving Troy, under a sky washed pale by smoke. The men want the ordinary world with an almost painful hunger. They want bread without alarm, sleep without armor nearby, a child's voice in a courtyard, the smell of oil warming in a lamp. Yet the sea receives them without promising anything. It takes the oars, lifts the hulls, and begins to ask its questions one island at a time. The Lotus-Eaters ask the first question softly. What if peace meant forgetting? What if the ache of home could be dissolved like honey in the mouth? The danger there is gentle enough to be tempting. No monster stands at the shore, no sword is raised, only memory loosens, and with it the difficult thread of identity. Odysseus pulls his men away because he knows that a painless rest bought with the loss of self is not true rest. Polyphemus asks a harsher question. What can intelligence do when strength owns the doorway? In the cave, Odysseus becomes smaller than the world around him. The stone is too heavy, the giant too strong, the night too enclosed. His answer is language, a false name, a timing, a plan hidden inside helplessness. Yet the escape is stained by pride. He survives through wit. then endangers himself through the desire to be known. That desire is not difficult to understand. After years of war, after a plan as famous as the wooden horse, after fear in a cave, a man might want the world to hear his name, but Greek myth is severe with such moments. The name thrown back across the water becomes a hook for Poseidon's anger. The sea god does not forget. The waves remember what Odysseus should have left unspoken. Aeolus and the Bag of Winds show another kind of fragility. A captain may be wise, but a crew can still doubt him. Companions are not extensions of the hero's will. They are tired, jealous, frightened, hopeful, and suspicious in their own ways. Ithaca appears close enough to wound them with hope, and then one act of mistrust drives it away. The pain of almost home is sharper than distance because the heart has already begun to arrive. The Laestrygonian Harbor teaches caution after the lesson has become costly. A safe-looking place can be dangerous because it offers enclosure. High cliffs, still water, and a narrow entrance may seem protective until the same shape becomes a trap. Odysseus leaves one ship outside, and that decision saves the story. Sometimes wisdom is only a small hesitation at the edge of a place that looks too still. Circe's island is different. It is not only a threat, it is a pause with fragrance and firelight. The men become animals, but they are restored. The house becomes warm, the table is set. The goddess who first frightens them becomes a guide. This is why the Odyssey feels more like life than a simple contest. Not every danger remains an enemy. Not every delay is meaningless. Some delays feed the body while quietly testing whether the soul still wants its road. When Circe sends Odysseus to the dead, the voyage changes depth. He is no longer merely moving across geography. He is traveling through memory, mortality, and prophecy. Tiresias gives directions, but Anticlea gives sorrow. A mother found among the shades cannot be embraced. That image carries the cost of absence more strongly than any storm. Odysseus has been trying to reach home, and in the underworld he learns that home has been changing without him. Achilles among the dead adds another silence. The greatest warrior does not praise glory from beyond the grave. He would rather be a poor living servant than lord of shadows. The lesson falls quietly across Odysseus' path. Survival, humble and difficult, is worth more than a song that leaves the singer cold. The Odyssey keeps returning to this truth. The ordinary breath of life is precious because it can be lost. The Sirens offer knowledge in the form of beauty. Their song is dangerous because it seems to promise completion. A tired mind longs for an explanation that will gather every wound into order. Odysseus wants to hear and survive the hearing, so he creates a boundary before desire arrives. Wax for the crew, ropes for himself, instructions given while clear. This is one of the wisest images in the poem, arranging protection in advance of weakness. Scylla and Charybdis are the nightmare of limited choices. No perfect route exists. Odysseus must steer near one grief to avoid a greater one. The story does not pretend that leadership keeps the hands clean. It only shows a man passing between devouring forms of loss, emerging with fewer voices on the deck. Even in a softened telling, that passage should remain solemn. Some choices save the whole by failing to save everyone. Thrinacia, the island of Helios's cattle, asks whether hunger can keep an oath. The men have been warned. They know the cattle are sacred. Yet storms trap them, food dwindles, and desperation changes the sound of good counsel. Eurylochus speaks for the body when the body has suffered too long. Better to die once at sea, he says in the old poem Spirit, than to waste away slowly. The choice is wrong, but it is not empty of human pressure. Odysseus sleeps when the cattle are taken. That detail matters. He cannot watch every hour. No leader, however clever, can prevent every failure. The companions act, the sun god sees, Zeus is asked to answer, and the voyage narrows toward catastrophe. When the storm finally breaks, it is not random weather. It is consequence-given wind and thunder. The ship is shattered. Odysseus alone continues. Alone he clings to wreckage, and the hero becomes almost nothing. A body in water, a pair of hands, a will not yet extinguished. The sea that has been road, enemy, and mirror becomes everything around him. He has lost crew, ship, spoils, and nearly name. This stripping away prepares the long stillness of Calypso's island, where survival becomes another form of captivity. Ogygia is beautiful enough to confuse the heart. Calypso offers shelter, love, and even immortality. For many heroes, such an offer would end the search. No age, no death, no ordinary grief. But Odysseus looks from her island toward the sea, and wants the mortal woman who waits in a mortal house. This is one of the most moving choices in Greek myth. He chooses limits because love without time would not be the home he seeks. Calypso is not merely cruel. Her name suggests concealment, and she conceals him from the world as much as she keeps him safe from it. Her island is a hidden place where the story nearly stops. When Hermes arrives with the command of Zeus, the pause breaks. Calypso lets him go, though not without sorrow. Even divine figures in these stories can be lonely. Even a goddess may lose what she wanted to keep. The raft Odysseus builds is an answer made of hands. After palaces, caves, enchanted houses, dead kingdoms, and divine islands, he returns to timber, rope, and labor. He cuts, shapes, binds, and launches. There is dignity in that. A person who has lost everything may still make the next small vessel. The raft is not grand, but it points toward home, and that is enough for the sea to test it. Poseidon breaks the raft, and again Odysseus is reduced to endurance. Ino's veil, the river's mercy, and Athena's care help him reach Scheria, but help does not erase exhaustion. When he sleeps beneath the olive bushes covered with leaves, he is close to the simplest form of safety. Ground under the body, branches above, breath continuing. Before he can be honored in a hall, he must sleep like someone washed ashore from the edge of life. Nausicaa's kindness is a dawn after storm. She is young, but she behaves with grace. Odysseus speaks to her carefully because he knows how vulnerable he appears and how easily a stranger can frighten. Their meeting is one of the poem's gentle thresholds. It shows that civilization begins again not with a throne, but with clean clothing, food, directions, and the decision not to turn away from need. The Phaeacians give Odysseus something he has lacked: listeners. In their hall, his wandering becomes a story told in order. This is not a small thing. Pain that remains only inside the body can feel like weather without horizon. Spoken aloud, it becomes a path with stations: Lotus, Cave, Winds, Harbor, Goddess dead, Song straight, Cattle, Island, Storm. The telling does not undo the losses, but it gives them shape. When the Phaeacian ship carries him sleeping to Ithaca, the homecoming is tenderly strange. He does not row. He does not command. He is carried like a child or a dream. After so many years of effort, the final crossing happens while he rests. Perhaps That is another kindness in the poem. Not every arrival must be forced awake. Sometimes the soul comes home while the conscious mind has finally let go. Athena's mist around Ithaca is more than disguise. It suggests that even the true home may be unrecognizable at first. Return can be bewildering. The place is real, but the person returning has changed. Odysseus must learn his own shore again. He must enter not as a triumphant king, but as a beggar, a listener, a watcher. The final test of cunning is humility. Eumaeus the swineherd offers one of the warmest shelters in the story. He does not know the stranger is his lord. His kindness is therefore clean. He gives food because a guest has arrived. He speaks loyalty because loyalty has become his nature, not because anyone powerful is rewarding him. In a poem filled with gods, monsters, and kings, a good hut can shine brighter than a palace. Telemachus meeting his father is not only reunion, it is the joining of two unfinished stories. The son has grown in absence, shaped by rumors and pressure. The father returns with memories no son can fully imagine. Athena allows recognition, and the space between them fills at once with disbelief, grief, and sudden hope. Their embrace does not recover the lost years, but it gives those years somewhere to go. Penelope's intelligence has been working all this time. While Odysseus moves through islands, she moves through days inside a besieged house. Her loom is her ship. Her delay is her voyage. By weaving and unweaving, she creates time, and time becomes protection. She's not merely waiting as a passive figure in the distance, she's actively preserving the possibility of the household's truth. Argos, the old dog, recognizes what others miss. That moment is small, and because it is small, it pierces. The animal body remembers the master beneath age, rags, and disguise. Recognition does not always come first from the powerful. Sometimes it comes from the creature lying near the gate, too weak to rise, strong enough only to know. Then even that strength is spent. The bow in the hall belongs to the sterner part of the poem. For sleep, we can let the violence stay behind a curtain. What matters is the restoration of order and the end of noise. The house that had been eaten hollow by arrogance begins to return to itself. A threshold becomes a threshold again. A table becomes a table again. A marriage can speak without being drowned out by strangers. Penelope's test of the bed is the perfect answer to disguise. Faces change, voices roughen, bodies age. But the secret of the bed remains rooted. Odysseus knows that it was made from a living olive tree, built into the chamber itself. The marriage bed cannot be moved because the deepest truth of the household is joined to the earth. In that image, wandering and rootedness finally meet. The olive tree matters. It is not a cedar cut and carried, not a plank bought in a market, but a living trunk shaped without being uprooted. Odysseus, the man of motion, made his bed from something that stayed. Penelope, the woman who remained, recognizes him by that work. The story's long circle closes around craft, memory, and place. After recognition, there is still a world to settle, but the night does not need every public consequence. It can rest inside the chamber where truth has been spoken. Odysseus and Penelope talk, perhaps through hours, perhaps with tears, perhaps with pauses too deep for words. A long absence cannot be crossed in a single embrace. Yet the crossing has begun, and the sea outside the house is no longer between them. For the listener, Odysseus's voyage can become less a map than a breathing pattern. leave, lose, remember, endure, speak, return. The islands are many, but the motion underneath is simple. A person can drift far from the self and still carry a hidden bearing. A name can be disguised and still survive. A home can wait, not unchanged, but faithful enough to be known again. Now let Ithaca grow quiet around the returned man. The goats settle on the hills. The olive leaves turn their pale undersides to the night wind. The harbour darkens. The rooted bed rests in the room like a secret the earth has kept. The long road of water loosens behind him, island by island, until even the hardest names are only stars reflected on a calm sea. The Odyssey can linger too, around the people who remain at the edges of the famous journey. A voyage is never only the traveller. It is also the wife who keeps the house from being rewritten, the son who grows under uncertainty, the servants who decide what loyalty means when power is absent, the strangers who offer bread, and the dead whose voices still shape the living. Odysseus moves across the sea, but many others hold pieces of the road. Penelope's waiting is not empty. It has texture, strategy, fatigue, and private anger. Every day in Ithaca she must measure speech. Too much grief would make her vulnerable. Too much hope would make her seem foolish. Too much refusal would sharpen the suitor's impatience. So she lives in balance, using the loom as both work and shield. By day, the cloth grows. By night, it returns to possibility. Her delay is a craft as subtle as any plan Odysseus makes. Telemachus begins as a child inside a story he cannot verify. His father is everywhere and nowhere, praised in songs, doubted by strangers, remembered by servants, mocked by the men eating in his hall. To grow up under such absence is to inherit a question. When he searches for news, he is not only looking for Odysseus, he is trying to discover the shape of his own courage. A son of a wandering man must learn how to stand. Athena's care often arrives through disguise. She does not simply solve the story. She nudges, counsels, strengthens, conceals, and reveals at the needed hour. This is a quieter form of divine help than thunder. It resembles the way wisdom sometimes works in human life, not by removing the road, but by giving the mind enough steadiness to take the next part of it. Odysseus remains responsible for choices, yet he is not entirely alone. Poseidon is not only anger, he is the immensity of what cannot be controlled. A sailor may be clever, disciplined, beloved by a goddess, and still the sea can rise. The poem knows this. It does not flatter human planning beyond its reach. Water has its own will in the imagination of Greece. To cross it is to accept that skill matters deeply and does not guarantee arrival. This is frightening but also truthful. The companions of Odysseus are often remembered for their failures, yet their failures are human. They open the bag of winds because they are tired of hierarchy and suspicious of hidden treasure. They touch the cattle because hunger and storm have worn down obedience. They linger where rest is offered because the body longs to stop. The poem is severe with them, but sleep can read them with some mercy. Not every wrong choice begins in wickedness. Eurylochus especially deserves a softer glance. He is cautious at Circe's house, frightened for good reason, later persuasive in the wrong direction on Thrinacia. He is the voice of ordinary limits beside Odysseus's extraordinary endurance. A story needs such a figure because most people are not heroes every hour. They become afraid, hungry, resentful, and practical. Through Eurylochus, the poem admits that survival is not only noble, it is also messy. The cattle of Helios shine in the story like a boundary marked by sunlight. They are beautiful because they are forbidden. The men see them while trapped by weather, and the island becomes a test of patience under deprivation. Sacred things are easiest to respect when one is comfortable. The true test comes when the stomach is empty and the sky will not clear. In that pressure, reverence becomes difficult, and difficulty reveals character. Calypso's offer of immortality is also a test of scale. She can give what mortals dream of and fear: endless life, beauty, shelter, a love outside ordinary decay. Odysseus refuses because endlessness without the right beloved is another island. He would rather age with Penelope than remain forever beside a goddess who cannot become home. This choice gives the poem its mortal heart. The limited life is not a lesser prize when it is truly one's own. Nausicaa belongs to the kindness of thresholds. She meets Odysseus when he is least adorned by heroism. He has no ship, no crew, no fine appearance, no public proof. He has only speech, need, and the dignity he can still gather around himself. Her response shows the civilization the poem values: hospitality before certainty, help before full knowledge, grace offered to a stranger who might have been easy to fear. The Phaeacian hall is a chamber of listening. There, Odysseus becomes narrator of himself. He chooses the order, tone, and meaning of what happened. This matters because trauma often arrives as fragments: a cave, a cry, a shore, a storm, a face in the dead. Story arranges the fragments without pretending they were easy. The listeners do not row his past away, but they give it a place to be heard. When he reaches Ithaca asleep, the poem gives him what he has not granted himself for years: helpless arrival. The Phaeacians carry him without asking him to plan. They place him on shore like a precious burden. His treasures lie beside him, but the greater gift is that he has crossed the last water without vigilance. For a man who has survived by watching, sleep itself becomes a ferry. The mist Athena lays over Ithaca has a dreamlike wisdom. Home is not immediately obvious because homecoming is not simple recognition. A person may return to the correct place and still feel estranged. The trees are familiar, yet altered. The paths are known, yet the feet hesitate. The returning self is not the leaving self. The mist gives Odysseus time to become ready for his own life again. Eumaeus's hut is one of the poem's quiet sanctuaries. Its value is not luxury, but faithfulness. A poor shelter can be richer than a corrupted hall when the heart inside it remains true. Eumaeus gives the disguised stranger food and respect. He speaks of his absent master with longing. In doing so, he shows Odysseus that some part of Ithaca has stayed intact, not in the palace, but in the humble place beyond it. Recognition unfolds in layers: Telemachus first, then Argos, then the nurse Euryclea by the scar, then Penelope by the bed. Each recognition belongs to a different part of identity: father, master, body, husband, maker of a secret-rooted thing. Odysseus cannot simply announce himself and be restored. He must be known piece by those whose memories hold different truths. The scar recognized by Euryclea is another small door in the poem. Bodies remember what names conceal. A wound from youth, carried under rags and age, becomes evidence stronger than speech. The nurse who once held him as a child sees the mark and knows the man. That moment joins infancy, youth, wandering and return in one touch. The body has been travelling with its history all along. Penelope's caution is not coldness, it is fidelity protecting itself from illusion. After 20 years, hope can be dangerous. Many stories, rumours and liars may have crossed her threshold. To test the stranger is to honour the marriage, not doubt it. She asks about the bed, because true love in this poem is not merely feeling. It is shared knowledge, work done together, a secret no outsider can invent. The bed, rooted in olive wood, is the still centre of the wandering tale. Odysseus has crossed seas, outwitted monsters, heard the dead, refused a goddess, and survived storms, but the proof of himself is domestic craft. He knows how the bed was made because his own hands shaped it. He knows it cannot be moved because its root remains in the earth. After all the motion, the truth is something fixed. There is rest in knowing that the poem ends not with conquest alone, but with recognition. The deepest homecoming is not the return of property or power. It is the moment when disguise is no longer needed. The wanderer can be seen. The one who waited can stop guarding every word. The house can begin, slowly, to sound like itself again. Outside, the sea remains, but it has lost its claim for the night. For sleep, let the voyage become a circle drawn on dark water. Troy, lotus, cave, winds, harbour, island, underworld, song, whirlpool, cattle, goddess, river, palace, hut, hall, bed. Each place glimmers once, then softens. You do not have to remember the order. The old poem remembers for you. It has carried these names for centuries and can carry them a little farther while you rest. The final kindness of the Odyssey is that home is not perfect, only real. Ithaca has problems waiting. The house has been damaged. The years cannot be restored. Yet the rooted bed remains. The olive tree lives, Penelope knows. Telemachus has found his father, and Odysseus can hear the ordinary night around his own walls. Sometimes that is enough for the soul, not a flawless ending, but a true place to lay down the oar. One final current can move beneath the Odyssey before sleep. The poem is full of motion, yet its deepest images are still. Penelope at the loom, the olive bed rooted in the floor, Argos lifting his head, Eumaeus' hut in the quiet fields, Athena standing near in disguise. These still images matter because the voyage is not only a sequence of adventures, it is the search for a stillness that can be trusted. Odysseus learns again and again that a rival cannot be forced by cleverness alone. He can plan his way out of a cave, listen safely to the Sirens, speak well to Nausicaa, and hide his name when needed. But the sea remains larger than strategy. The story honors intelligence without worshipping it. Wisdom is intelligence humbled by weather, grief, hunger, memory, and the knowledge that other hearts have been waiting too. Penelope's loom is the answer to the wooden horse. Both are acts of craft, but one wins a war and the other preserves a home. Odysseus builds deception to enter Troy. Penelope builds delay to protect Ithaca. The poem places them far apart, then lets us see that they belong together. Husband and wife both survive through patience shaped by skill. Their recognition is therefore not sudden romance only. It is the meeting of two minds. Telemachus gives the homecoming a future. Without him, the story might close only around loss and reunion. With him, the house has another generation standing in the doorway, uncertain but no longer fatherless. He does not receive the childhood that absence took from him, but he receives the living man. In myth, as in life, repair rarely restores everything. It gives enough truth for the next day to begin. The sea outside Ithaca does not disappear. It remains below the cliffs, dark and breathing. Odysseus has come home, but the world is still wide, and memory is still full of islands. The difference is that he no longer has to answer every wave. For tonight, the oar can rest, the sail can hang quiet, the mind can stop scanning the horizon for danger. If the listener keeps one image from the voyage, let it be the rooted bed. After all the drifting, here is something made by hand and held by earth. Olive wood, marriage, craft, secrecy, recognition and rest are joined in one place. The bed says that home is not merely where a person arrives. It is what has known the truth of them long enough to recognize them through change. The old names can loosen now: Troy, Ithaca, Ogygia, Scheria, Aiaia, Thrinacia. They no longer need to be held in order. They can become lights along a distant coast. Odysseus has carried them far enough. Penelope has waited long enough. Telemachus has wondered long enough. The poem can keep watch while the listener lets go. So let the wine dark sea become only darkness and breathing. Let the oars become the rhythm of sleep. Let Athena's counsel become a quiet steadiness at the edge of thought. Let Poseidon's anger sink into deep water where it cannot reach this room. Let Ithaca rest under olive leaves, and let the wanderer, at last, be still. Before the final tide carries the tale away, let the house of Ithaca become very quiet. The suitor's noise is gone from the hall, the lamps burn lower. Beyond the walls, goats shift on the hills, and olive leaves whisper in the night wind. Odysseus does not need to speak cleverly now. Penelope does not need to test. Telemachus does not need to wonder. For a little while, each person can simply be where the long story has brought them. The rooted bed remains the center. Around it, the years do not vanish, but they stop scattering. War, wandering, storm, disguise, and grief settle into the wood like rain into earth. The bed does not answer every question. It only proves that something true endured while everything else moved. That is enough for sleep. The mind can rest near that rooted thing and let the sea grow distant. Odysseus will still have memories. A homecoming does not erase the cave, the island, the dead, the song, or the storm, but memory can change its distance. What once surrounded him can become something seen from shore. The listener may borrow that distance tonight. Whatever has been loud in the mind can move outward, wave by wave, until it is still present, but no longer pressing close. So let Ithaca be not a demand, but a permission. A person does not have to arrive perfectly to rest. The wanderer comes back weathered. The house receives him in pieces. Recognition takes time, and still the night can be kind. The oar can be laid down, the sail can be furled. The old sea can breathe below the cliffs without calling anyone away. One more breath can pass through Ithaca before the story closes. The island has waited through rumour, arrogance, grief, disguise, and the long ache of the sea. Now it does not need to prove anything. The hills are dark, the harbour is still, and the house has begun the slow work of becoming ordinary again. Ordinary is not small here. Ordinary is the treasure for which the whole voyage has been made. The poem does not ask the listener to be Odysseus. It does not ask for cunning endurance or heroic watchfulness tonight. Those belong to the old song. The listener may take only the gentler part, the permission to stop rowing, the image of a shore that does not move away, the knowledge that even a wandering mind can be guided toward rest by one quiet light. The last gift of the voyage is that it does not ask to be followed perfectly. The listener may forget the order of islands, the names of winds, the shape of every shore, and still receive the deeper motion away from noise through trial, toward rest. Odysseus has carried the harder road, Penelope has kept the quieter flame, Telemachus has found the missing voice. The house is not untouched, but it is true enough for night. Let that truth be enough. Let the sea move farther out. Let Ithaca remain dark and gentle under olive leaves. The sea is quiet now, and its quiet is the point. It has carried the names far enough that none of them need to be held tightly. The listener can leave the last oar in the water and let the dark current do what rest has always known how to do. And if one last image remains, let it be the olive tree inside the house, rooted, patient, alive in the dark. Around it the bed is built, and around the bed the room grows quiet. Around the room the island rests, and around the island the sea breathes without taking anyone away tonight. This is enough. The wandering has become stillness. No more rowing is needed. No more names must be sorted. The poem can keep its own map now, while the listener rests beside the shore. The harbour is quiet, the lamp remains. The old sea has no further claim on this hour. Rest can begin. Now the long voyage begins to fold itself into the dark water of sleep. Troy is far behind, only an ember in the mind. The Lotus-Eaters have lowered their flowers. Polyphemus remains in his cave of shadow and echo. Aeolus has tied his winds again. The Laestrygonian Harbor is empty under high cliffs. Circe sings somewhere on Aiaia, her loom moving softly in lamplight. Tiresias has returned to the hush of the dead. The Sirens are only a thread of music beyond hearing. Scylla and Charybdis are rocks and water under a moon you need not approach. The Cattle of Helios graze in sunlight. No hand will trouble. Calypso's island is hidden. Nausicaa's river runs clear. Ithaca rests beneath its olive trees. Odysseus has come home, and yet the meaning of the tale is not that every journey ends quickly, or that every longing is satisfied in the way we expect. The meaning is slower. It says that the desire for home can survive bewilderment. It says that memory can be a compass, though sometimes a painful one. It says that cleverness matters, but so do endurance, humility, and the willingness to be known after years of disguise. For you, tonight, the sea does not have to be crossed. It can simply breathe beside you. Each wave can take a thought and smooth it. Each retreating wash of water can draw a little tension from the shore of the body. If there is a Troy behind you, some old labour or brightness or ruin, let it fade to a distant glow. If there is an Ithaca ahead, some place of rest not yet reached, let it wait without demanding your arrival before morning. Think of the bed of olive wood, rooted and unmoving. Think of Penelope, recognizing the truth not by a face alone, but by a secret held faithfully in memory. Think of Telemachus laying down the burden of not knowing. Think of Athena's grey eyes in the dark, not commanding now, only watching over the quiet after the work is done. The wine-dark sea becomes darker, the stars lower themselves into it one by one. The ship is no longer a ship, but a cradle. The oars are no longer oars, but breaths. Dip, pull, lift, inhale, exhale, rest. Odysseus sleeps in Ithaca. Penelope sleeps beside him. The house sleeps around them. Even Poseidon, far off among his deep halls, lets the waters settle for a while. And you may settle too. You do not need to solve the route. You do not need to name every island. You do not need to be clever or strong or watchful. Let the old story keep sailing after you have stopped listening. Let it move under the surface of dreams, carrying its dark hull through moonlit water. Somewhere, always, there is a shore. Somewhere, always, there is a lamp. Somewhere beneath the slow turning of the night, the sea is becoming sleep. The night gives the story room to breathe. Between one island and the next, there is always water, and water is never empty. It holds reflected stars, hidden depths, old prayers, and the soft labor of men leaning over oars. It holds the silence after a warning, the silence before a name is spoken, the silence in which a person remembers what they are trying not to forget. Odysseus crosses that silence again and again. You may hear it as a hush around the words, a wide blue-black space where nothing needs to happen quickly. Every homecoming has such spaces. There are days when the shore is not visible, days when the wind is wrong, days when the heart grows tired of wanting. The ancient singers knew this. They did not give Odysseus a straight road because human longing rarely travels in straight lines. It circles, loses courage, finds courage, mistakes rest for arrival, mistakes danger for knowledge, and still, somewhere underneath, keeps turning toward its island. Now let Ithaca grow quiet around the returned man. The goats settle on the hills above the palace. The olive leaves turn their pale undersides to the night wind. The harbour darkens. The rooted bed rests in the chamber like a secret the earth has kept. The long road of water loosens behind the wanderer island by island until even the hardest names become only stars reflected on a calm sea. You may, in your imagination, set down beside you everything that the day has asked you to carry. Set down the meetings, the messages, the small worries with their bright, sharp edges, the larger worries with their long, slow weight. The story has crossed a great sea. The story can carry your smaller crossings too. The wave that lifts a tired hero can lift a tired listener just as easily. Good evening and welcome back, one last time, to the slow, gentle work of letting the story rest. Get cozy, settle in, and let us begin the long lowering of the lamp. The tale of Odysseus has been carried by many tongues across the ages, by sailors at the rail, by wives at the loom, by children at the gate, by tired travellers who knew the ache of being drawn back toward a place where their name was known. In the beginning, before any of these tellings, there was only a quieter rumour of the long road home through wide water, a feeling that the heart could wander for years and still remember the shape of its own door. The old poets later gave it names. They gave it Penelope, Telemachus, Odysseus, and the rooted bed in its chamber. They gave it the long stillness in which it now rests. But that is a story for another day. For now, remember this. Tonight, the work of the tale is done. It simply was, like all old stories, the carrying of the long ache of homecoming through the long inheritance of nights. Let the names settle. Let the room settle. Let the night gather you up. Imagine the wine-dark sea far behind you, the long voyage and its many shores no longer pressing on your thoughts. In your mind, reach back and close an invisible door to the wandering, feeling it move on silent hinges, sealing the ships, the islands, and the long road of homecoming in calm and order. Then see a single candle, its flame steady in the darkness. With a slow, gentle breath, blow that candle out and let the last curl of light fade into the night. Rest well, sleep deeply, and let the ancient stories carry you into the night.